Welcome everybody, all those of you who are here and anybody watching this. This is the fifth in the Sandwich Arts Alliance Meet the Authors series, and we have two more to go after this. So we've got two very talented authors this morning, and we're going to hear about their books and their backgrounds, so this will be really great. We have the talks are slowly coming onto YouTube, and you can access them either through the Alliance website or the Sandwich Television website. I suppose you could go to YouTube and find Sandwich Arts Alliance Meet the Author Talks. But the purpose of these talks is really to introduce writers to each other, and I'm looking at a sea of writers out here. This is wonderful.
Awesome.
Introduce writers to each other, introduce the community to writers, and begin some discussion about this process. Why do writers write? Where does their material come from? Where does their talent come from? How much time does it take? You look at the cover of a book, and you go, oh, I like that. If you're going to be thinking about buying a book, oh, this is nice. That captures my eye. But what's behind that? What's behind the cover? What does the author put into it? So the purpose of this 7-part series is for all of us to understand the writing process a little bit better. So we have this morning Donna Rockwell here, who's a familiar face here in the Alliance Center. She's the owner of Do Well Studio in Sandwich. And in addition to writing and illustrating, Donna is a creator of graphic design, web design, and product design for a variety of industries, and an art instructor teaching drawing, painting, and printmaking to adults and children. And she just returned from teaching a class for adults with disabilities over in Cotuit, right? Yeah, so if you want to talk about any of these things, I think that would be very interesting. She received her BFA from the Rhode Island School of Design and Illustration and has taught here at the Alliance, the School of the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, and Cape Cod Can. So her book, Seeing Stars, which I have here, is her first children's book and was inspired by a project that the Alliance started last year, what was it called? The Starfish Trail, which I think Carolyn LeConte had initiated. So maybe we can hear a little bit about that project. So we have starfish and we have cows. So there can be many questions here, folks. We're also going to have some music. So this is going to be a fun hour.
Lots of mooing today.
Lots of mooing. Right. So Donna, please.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone for coming out. I asked Jim to let me go first because I think he's going to be more fun. So I appreciate that.
We love starfish.
So you heard a little bit about my background. I always considered myself probably an illustrator first, but I've always written kind of on the side. So writing has always been part of my life as well. But I did go to art school and I majored in illustration. And upon leaving school, immediately became a graphic designer and didn't do as much illustration as I thought I would. So doing a children's book was always kind of in the back of my mind. I went to some of my instructors in school were really accomplished illustrators and big name artists, and it was always something I aspired to and wanted to do. But I made my living doing graphic design, illustrated on the side, never got around to that book. I'm sure as writers you're all familiar with that concept. And it was always there. I always knew I probably would write a book eventually. So, many years down the line, you have to think about what's the impetus when you have this desire to write, or you have an idea in your head. What actually kicks it off and gets you actually pen to paper and gets it going. So in this case, it was the Arts Alliance Public Art Project. So like the Adirondack Chair that just finished up, they had done Starfish 2 years ago. So I had the idea that I would do a book just to produce locally that would be my reason to actually put the pen to the paper and do the thing you mean to do for 20 years. So I used that project, the Arts Alliance project, as my inspiration and my just had a deadline, it had, it had a purpose, and it gave me my idea for the book. So the Arts Alliance really was what got my ball rolling. So I took the idea of, there were these 20 3D starfish throughout town. So I took that idea, and the idea was born to have a book about an invasion of starfish. Because as the starfish were invading Sandwich, they invaded my book. So I just started writing, and I brought along just kind of my process papers. I mean, there's lots of scribbling. I probably started in a notebook first, but eventually typed it out, wrote over it, scribbled it out, started new. So kind of, on a smaller scale, the children's book has the same process, I think, as a longer work. We have the idea, you make the outline, you write, you revise, you edit, you have other people read it. In my case, I had as many kids as I could read it, which I thought was a very interesting part of the process, because I decided early on that I wanted a rhyming book, which is its own challenge. But you read it to yourself in your head so often, and you have a certain cadence, and the rhyme works in your head. And then you hand it to a 10-year-old, and they read it aloud, and it's a different story. The rhymes don't work. The cadence is wrong. It's like, so there was a lot of that. There was a lot of kind of testing it out, having adults read it, having kids read it, and just really hearing the rhythm and making sure that was right. Or that was how I intended it. Whether it was right or not, it was how I intended it. So the writing process was fun for me. I'd be interested to hear how the process of other children's book writers work, because I'm sure it's different for all. But once I had my story pretty firm, and I liked the way it flowed and sounded good to the ear, then I started with the process of thinking of it, how the pages would coincide with the story. So lots of little storyboards, like such, that probably only I could understand. So if you're familiar with children's book layout, they're usually 32 pages long, plus a cover. So you're kind of fitting your story into a certain mold that's established. They don't necessarily have to be, but for printing purposes, that's the standard. So really thinking about how the words and the pictures would work together. And again, the pacing of it, how much you reveal per page, and where you leave it more illustration, where you leave it more word-based, kind of some of those decisions in that stage were made. So, like I said, my background is illustration. So once I had the story down, then the long work started. And if you've ever, I know we have some illustrators in the audience, but the illustration process is long. The writing process itself is long, but the illustration process is just more labor-intensive time-wise. But it's so fun to take it from word to image. Yeah. And although I had visuals in my head of what would go with the words as I was producing the story, the actual sketching part and the figuring out what your final image would be, I found that process fun. Were you the same way? Like, were you thinking of the images as you write, and once you get down to actually making them, it's fun to see it come to life.
Did you change the words as you were doing the illustrations?
Not a lot, actually. Yeah, maybe a little bit here and there, just for how it was revealed. But no, I think the story stayed pretty similar, almost exactly. I think from when I finalized it on paper to when I started to do some of the images. I'm trying to think what might have changed. One thing that went back and forth was the title. So I had worked with a couple of friends of mine I worked with a librarian, a couple of English teachers, an editor, just to get feedback. And everybody was trying to get me to change the title, and I just didn't want to. Because maybe I was a little stubborn on it, but that was the title. It was from the get-go. And I had done a little research into what was already out there. There was already a book with this title, but it was a young adult novel, and I was like, I can live with that. It wasn't anything, it wasn't anything I would be like horrified to be associated with if somebody found it by accident.
What were some of the options that they had given you?
Starfish Wish. There's a wish in the book. So Starfish Wish, which already had been used a couple of times, was a Disney book. So even though that one was probably more appropriate, I didn't really want it.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think what some of the other suggestions were. But anyway, in my head, that was one thing I just, yeah, things like that.
Yeah, wish on a star.
More wishing. But I didn't want to change it, so I didn't. And that's one of the nice things about being in control of your own project. So I did, speaking of that, I did self-publish, so it wasn't working. I didn't have a boss. Nobody was telling me what to do.
Can you read a little?
I would love to read a little, yeah. Seeing Stars. And that's the title, whether you like it or not. All right.
Final answer.
That's my final answer. So Henry, a boy who dreamed of the sea, came to the seashore with one thing to see. He had lived his whole life in the mountains up high, and the stars that he knew only lived in the sky. But the stars that he dreamed of were found by the shore. There he'd find sea stars or starfish galore. On the very first morning, with a bucket and hope, he started his search. Did he find any? Nope. Despite his keen eye and a wholehearted try, he didn't see any, and a whole day went by. Then 2 and 3 and 4 days had passed. With only one left, Henry had to think fast. Henry's my son, by the way. That night, when the moon and the sun traded places and the stars began showing as faint glowing traces, Henry did the one thing he had left to try. He wished on a star, one up in the sky. Please, oh please, please, oh please, pleasey, please, please, let me see one tomorrow, he said into the breeze. And although he had little hope left for his dream, he went straight to bed, even skipping ice cream. Serious.
Oh, and that's you.
I guess it is. The next morning came even earlier than most, when he woke to Mom screaming like she'd just seen a ghost. And Dad was just standing there, frozen in shock, his arms stuck in place like a long broken clock. Then Henry saw it. Really, how could he not? Starfish he wanted? Well, starfish he got. They clung to the steeples, they covered the cars, they stuck to the lampposts and Sergeant Lamar's. There were hundreds, no thousands, a massive amount, in colors and sizes too many to count. He was stunned and delighted and a little bit nervous. Had his one little wish put this town out of service? The place was in chaos, all the people moved quickly. Get them back to the water before they get sickly, the mayor cried out to all who would listen, but Henry alone saw their strange magic glisten. For these were no ordinary stars of the sea. They were special, as Henry had wished them to be. He alone knew the secret of the starfish arrival. He alone knew the certainty of their survival. Down to the ocean the townspeople raced, until in the water the last one was placed. The tide picked them up and they went with the flow, and they all made it safely, as you and I know. A little wink and a nod. Now Henry left happy, his dream had come true, but a new one was forming, as dreams often do. As his plane lifted off, he saw something bizarre. You know, strange things can happen when you wish on a star. Oh, good. You laughed at all the right places. Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, that was wonderful.
I wondered, where did you find the children to read for you?
My own children, my children's friends, random children I would run into in my life. Yeah, I just asked around.
It also reminds me of an old anecdote about the starfish that had been swept up on the beach, and
Yeah.
hundreds and hundreds of them.
Yep.
And there's this one guy going down, tossing them one by one back into the ocean, and somebody came by and said, "Why are you doing this? This is ridiculous. It doesn't matter. They're all going to die." And as he tossed one, and he said, "It matters to
Matters to that one. That's right. And I had to work that into my book because if this was really happening, all those starfish would have died. So I had to put a little starfish magic in there to have it succeed.
Oh, we'll have some questions after, but Catherine, did you?
Yeah, I was curious to hear about your work with special needs children. Intuit, you said?
Yeah, it's Ekatuit, but it's Cape Cod Can, and it's actually adults. So we work with different organizations across the Cape, just offering art and music. Yeah.
I just have to comment, did you pay attention to the fact that this was her first book, and number one, the rhyming is very clever, but that feedback to change the topic, change the title, and she held to it. And you couldn't improve on Seeing Stars, as far as I'm concerned. Wishing, no.
Thanks.
So here was a writer who held to her creative knowledge. So thank you so much. That was wonderful. And now we're going to hear from Jim Petipas, author, illustrator, and songwriter of the Cows Go Moo book series. I'm dying to hear more.
Yeah.
Full of humor, illustrations that kids and parents are loving. And both these books are very strongly directed to children. Did you do any vetting with kids in your writing
I
process?
found that interesting. But I have my own kids, and my wife and friends. But this song, I'll give some history, but there's a long history to it. So it's actually been out there for a while.
Okay, well, we'll hear all about that. Jim's goal is to help children and families celebrate humor, music, art, and reading. And Jim also has a give back element to his book with buy a book, give a cow. So 10% of the profits go to the Heifer Project. Very, very admirable. Jim and his wife and their 2 daughters and dog Earl live in Bedford, Mass, but in the summer they live here in Sandwich. So this is just absolutely delightful. Looking forward to hearing lots about cows. And so we have Starfish, the inspiration of Starfish, and now cows.
Awesome.
So
I'll
take
start
it
with
away.
a knock-knock joke. Knock-knock. Who's there? Cows go.
Cows go where?
Cows go who, right? Yeah. No, the cows go moo, right? So Diane asked me what came first, the song or the book? And so the song came first. Back when I was in high school, I went to a summer camp called Happy Tea Ranch, which stood for a Happy Teen Ranch, kind of dorky, but had wonderful summers there. One summer I was there for 5 weeks. And I forget what year the song was actually written, but it was around 1980. I graduated in '82. And Christy and I actually have something in common. I graduated from Hingham High School, and so did she. Mm-hmm. And I grew up in Hingham and would go off to summer camp at least 3 summers, I think. And one of those summers, for skit night at summer camp, my buddies and I, our cabin, came up with this song we called the Cow Song. And I'm going to play it for you in a little bit. And so it's kind of, and then after that, we would sing it at youth group and really wherever somebody said, hey, sing the Cow Song. And so we would blow up surgical gloves, tape them to our bellies. We had toilet rolls as horns and cups on our noses. And it was just a lot of fun. So probably about 11 years ago, my daughters said, Dad, that song that you wrote back in high school, you should turn that into a children's picture book. And so years went by. I started, right then I said, yeah, I'll start, it's a good idea. I'll start sketching. And so I'll show you a little bit of the process here. Oops. My first sketch looked like this. And so the cows go moo. And then I said, you know what, I'm going through this thing and I didn't really have a process. I found out that Mass Art in Boston was doing a class on writing and illustrating children's books. And so for that class, you have to do a dummy book and do all the sketches and do as close, kind of some finished illustrations for that, for that class. And so that gave me the process. I did the Cows Go Moo as my project. And so for that class, the second cover looked like this. And, so that was a work in progress. The third cover looked like this. And this was pretty close to what the final cover looked like, And
Upside down.
Oh, upside down. Well, I'll show you on the real deal here. Third cover looked like this. And, through high school, I played the drums and I sang, and I was in a couple different bands, and so I love music. And so some of these musicians are all patterned after musicians. This is kind of patterned after me. I'm a drummer. But Paul McCartney and Bono from U2, and I've got Elton John in there, and Jimi Hendrix, and a whole bunch of different musicians kind of throughout the whole deal. And so what started as a song, I went into a recording studio. My neighbor here in Sandwich, who Brian has since moved away, but Brian Sanses, probably many of you guys know him. He lives across the street from me, or used to, on Boardwalk Road. And so he and I have become really good friends. And he and I went into the studio. He played harmonica, guitar obviously, bass guitar. And I played the drums and sang backup, cowbell of course. And you gotta have more cowbell. And my daughter and a couple of her buddies did backup. We called them the Mooettes. And so the song is actually available on my website as a free song that you can download that goes along with the book page by page. And as Christy mentioned, I also have Buy a Book, Give a Cow. One night, my daughter was at a concert in Boston, and I was sitting at the House of Blues restaurant, kind of killing some time. And I was reading this book at the time, Start Something That Matters, by Blake McCoskey, and he's the guy that started Tom's Shoes. And so he's got, buy one, give one. So I said, I'm going to do something like that with my children's book. And so I have Buy a Book, Give a Cow. And so 10% of my profits, we haven't become profitable yet. We've been donating cows yet. My wife said, if you're going to do this, do it for profits, out of the profits. But hopefully my goal is to become profitable in the books and in my future books. But we have been giving cows, but it hasn't been like full blown yet, so buy books, give a cow, and supporting Heifer International. They did an interview with me for one of their quarterly magazines. I didn't see it go out yet, but so I'm working along with them, and it's been exciting to do that. So, do you want to hear the story?
Yes.
All right. Well, first of all, I'll show you. I've always loved cows. This is me on my Uncle Vincent's farm when I was 7 years old up in Nova Scotia, Canada. Might have been in Antigonish. And then here's me up in New Hampshire with some Highland cows more recently. So the story is about a band of cows that travel all over the world. This is the map of where they go on their travel. And they're a literal band, traveling around. And somebody said to me, Jim, your book is very diverse. I didn't really think about that initially, but they travel all over the world, and they're all different styles of cows. We got Jersey and Angus and Highland and all that. And so the cows go all over the world and are involved in all kinds of mayhem and mishaps. And so if you pick up the book later on, you want to read it, I'll introduce you you can read all the different names of the cows. I won't take time to do that now. But this is a little introduction. It talks about the cows and where they're going and what they're doing, and an embarrassing thing happens to them when they're flying to England. And so we'll find out that in the story. So like Donna's book, my book is also a rhyming story. And the verses that we had back at summer camp, I've changed a little bit and worked them out to kind of, some of them were a little bit off color. So I changed them up to make them more appropriate. They weren't like bad, but I just wanted to make it more appropriate. So this is Beaker, and he's saying download the song, press play on your device, and here we go. And you guys can repeat after me. In the north. The south. And here's the cows hanging out at the beach. What kind of suntan lotion do you put on cows? Udder butter. We got a sea cow over here. So a friend of mine said, Jim, you've put a bunch of Easter eggs in your book. And that was one of my goals, is to not only make it a book that's exciting for kids, but as parents, as they read through it, like, oh, look at that. And, I get that joke and that kind of thing. So in the north, the south, the east. Where are they here? The Great Wall of China. The west. Monument Park in Arizona. So in the north, the south, the east, and west, the cows go moo, moo, moo. Here they are hanging out at the campfire, roasting marshmallows, singing the song.
Oh, an accordion.
And yeah, we got an accordion and some bongos. In the front, smooth as silk.
Smooth as silk.
Now we need you guys to say silk 5 times really fast. Silk, 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 silk. What do cows drink? Well, when they're calves, they drink milk, but when they're older, they drink water, of course. So in the front, smooth as silk. Out the back comes the milk. Some lick here, some lick there. Some just like to lick your hair. We've all heard of cow licks, right? So I've got Einstein here, you know, that famous painting of him licking emu, my emu cow. And so they come back to Boston here. This is actually patterned after Stevie Ray Vaughan, but Brian Sanchez is a big Stevie Ray Vaughan fan, so I put Stevie Ray in there for Brian. And hanging out on the stoop and singing, "The cows go moo." Sometimes here, in Paris, sometimes there. We've got the Louvre and the pyramids. And this is what happens. They lose their wardrobe luggage. And they end up in England, sometimes here, sometimes there, sometimes in their underwear. And what kind of underwear do cows wear? Under Armour, Calvin Klein, Mugu Boss. Highland cows, they don't wear any underwear. Right? The cows go moo, moo, moo. Some like mud. And after you play in the mud, what do you got to do? Take a bath. Some like suds. We got some famous paintings up here, cowified. Some just sit and chew their cud. And my real life dog, Earl, he made the book. Hanging out, chewing his bone. And what do cows eat? Some eat hay. Some eat grass. Now, back in the day, the lyric was, some eat hay, some eat grass, some will kick you in the cows go moo, moo, moo. So I said I had to change that a little bit. We all know that when cows eat a lot of hay, eat a lot of grass, drink a lot of water, some eat hay, some eat grass, some just pass a lot of gas. And where are they here? Easter Island, 12,000 miles off the coast of Chile. And I've had an opportunity in my life to travel quite a bit, which I'm very grateful for. I haven't been to Easter Island yet, hope to get there someday. But it's been neat to kind of like go to these places and write about them and draw about them. They come back to Boston and they have an end of the tour parade on the flatbed truck here. And if you're a musician, I have the sheet music in here. And then in the back, I have a little bit about buy a book, give a cow, and why cows like to moo. So this has been fun, and I'm working on book 2 right now, which actually started from a song that my roommate in college and I wrote, and it was originally called the Pettypaws Shuffle, and I've sang that song quite a bit. I was a youth pastor for 20 years, and so we did the Pettypaws Shuffle every retreat weekend kind of a thing. It's a big dance and song. And I said, the Pettypaws Shuffle, I can take that song and call it the Cows Go Moo Shuffle. Same syllables work out. And so I've got all the sketching done for the Cows Go Moo Shuffle. And I'm actually meeting with a friend next week who's also creative. And we're working out kind of the particulars of the song. Going into the studio, recording the song, because I got to get the song right before I can do the pictures that will go along with the song. And so hopefully that will come out well and be catchy and all that. So I'll sing the song and then I'll tell you a little bit more about my process. Now that you guys know all the lyrics, you got to sing along with me. So I do a lot of, I don't do it, I want to do more schools. I've done some schools. I've been to Forestdale here in town and the library, and we had some great times. And so I'm trying to get into a lot of schools. And as we all know, schools is where you sell the most books. And we do a lot of pre-sales and things like that. But I do it at I did a whole tour for J.P. Lick's Ice Cream. I do a lot of farm stands and and that kind of a thing. So having cows, anything to do with cows, you have an opportunity to kind of go and share the book and the story and all that. So I need you guys to go moo, moo. The cows go moo. In the north, the south, the east, and west. In the north, the south, the east and west, the cows go moo, moo, moo. The cows go moo, moo, moo. Moo, the cows go moo. In the front, smooth as silk. Out the back comes the milk. The cows go moo, moo, moo. The cows go moo, moo, moo. You can clap if you want. Moo, the cows go moo. Sometimes here, sometimes there, sometimes in their underwear. The cows go moo, moo, moo. The cows go moo, moo, moo. Moo, the cows go moo. All right, now you guys go a bunch of moos. Moo. Moo, the cows go moo. Some eat hay, some eat grass, some just pass a lot of gas. The cows go moo, moo, moo. 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 Moo. The cows go moo. The cows go moo. The cows go moo. Moo. Everybody moo. Yeah, good job. We got most of the verses in there. Yeah, there you go.
Thank you.
I do, yeah. Yeah, I've got all the video. And
It will be now. We have sandwich television.
I call it MooTube. And so, yeah, so it's been a lot of fun. I've got my website, and you can go there and download the song and all that. So kind of like the process, the hardest part I find is the marketing, you know, and really getting the book out there and doing all that. I would love to be sitting down and doing the drawing and all the creative stuff, but I find my days get spent, you know, doing a lot of the marketing. Part-time, I'm an adolescent and family counselor, and so having worked with teenagers pretty much my whole life, I still have a passion for helping teenagers, and so I meet with clients Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, and then when I'm not doing that, I'm working on the book and having fun with my family. But so the process, I also wanted to self-publish my book, so I'd have kind of control over it. My imprint is called Boardwalk Books, and so if you've seen that. And I worked with a group called Mill City Press out of Minneapolis, and they kind of like the author services. And Dean was asking me, well, how'd you do your book? POD, or print on demand, or did you get them printed? And so we went offset printing, printed about 3,000 copies. I've sold about 1,000 roughly, given away a few hundred. So my wife said, you got to get the other 2,000 sold, you know, before you do the next book. So I think hopefully I'll come out with the next book before I have to sell them all. But I also, my daughter said, Dad, you should do a coloring book. My daughter's my good creative thing. So I did a coloring book based off the first book. And so you got all the coloring books in there and things and some stories, word search. Remember the old word search things? And so it's been interesting. So I didn't plan on becoming an author, but it just kind of like evolved into it. And I went to Moo Restaurant. You guys ever been to Moo Restaurant Steakhouse in Boston? It's on Beacon Hill. And so I went in there and I said, hey, I've got this book I did on about cows. And I said, if you're ever interested, as gifts or whatever, or employees. And she said, I would love for you to do a coloring book, activity book for the kids as they come into the restaurant. So, my motto is it doesn't hurt to ask. And so, wherever I do, wherever I'm going, so I did this coloring activity book, which is basically my coloring book, but I added some things, specifically cow jokes and things like that. And then they have a mosaic in their basement, which is from 500 AD, and it has a couple deer on it. So I said, I know what I'm going to do. So I changed the deer into some cows. But if you ever have a chance to go there, go into the basement and see the mosaic, or I call it a mosaic. And so they said, Jim, would you do a children's book similar to Katie Copley, the Fairmont? You guys familiar with Katie Copley? So I'm working on some ideas for a book called Cows on the Common. And the common, as you may know, used to be where all the cows would graze. Yeah, and even on Park Street, this is interesting, Park Street, which runs down the right side, depending on how you're looking at it, people that lived in those homes, they had stables underneath their homes, and I had a tunnel that would come up under the street and come onto the common. So it was really some interesting history there, you know. So are we doing okay on time, Christy? Wrap it up?
Let's see, no.
Oh, okay.
But I've got to toss in here, you do know that Town Neck and Sandwich was
Yes.
common land for grazing for
Yeah,
cows.
yeah. Yeah, I have an old map
Maybe
at my
a
house that
future
has the
book.
cows on it and
Yeah.
that kind of a thing, yeah. So I'm hoping to do a third book, well, the Go Moo Shuffle, and then I'm hoping to do a third book in this series. My daughter said, again, my daughter, Sophia, said, Dad, you should do the Cows Go Metal. So I gotta kind of test the market on that. I'm not sure if it's gonna work, but I like all styles of music, and so that would be fun to do. But my dad lived as a homeless person the majority of his adult life, and in and out of prison and on and off drugs and mental illness. And so I won't give you the whole story here, but hopefully you'll be able to read it in a graphic novel that I'm hoping to do someday called Jimmy Bojangles, the Prodigal Dad. And, you know, so this has kind of opened up doors for me to kind of use my creative and artistic and musical talents in this way. And I'm really loving what I'm doing. And I'm thankful for places like this where we can come and share and talk about books. So thank you very much.
Yeah, fantastic. How about questions? Shall we turn it over? No, go ahead.
With your book, are you the sole illustrator, or do you have help with it, or what happens with you with that?
Yeah, so at a young age, my dad actually, we would go to Hingham Public Library all the time, and I would usually check out children's books, but also books on how to draw, mostly animals, cars, and that kind of thing. And so I drew at a young age. I loved art in high school. I took 3 years of technical drawing, and then I didn't really do much with art until this. And you know, I would do some sketching here and there, but the process of kind of learning how to draw comics, YouTube was a great help, and there was a couple online courses you could take. If you're not familiar with SVS, SVS Learn it's called, and it's a group of artists, illustrators, and they have all of these tutorials on drawing. You know, so you can see how my first cover, was, just above stick figures. And then it kind of evolved. I would learn about shading and dark lines and, foreground, midground, background, and, all the things that we learn in art school. So I kind of learned that by learning on YouTube and reading books, studying books. And I check out from the library. I can order them online, go and pick them up. Probably about 20 children's books a month. Pick them up, read through. And so I see a lot of what other artists are doing. I love Donna's artwork. Very similar to Elise Parsley. Do you know Elise Parsley?
I don't know.
She wrote a book, Don't Bring an Alligator to School. I think I've got it a little bit wrong, but your style is very similar to hers. And I love that style with the bold lines and the bright colors and all that. And so that's what I tried to do with my books as well.
Other questions, Dean?
Yeah, just a comment, not a question, but, as a children's author and not an illustrator, you guys are so gifted. I hope you appreciate your dual talent.
Yeah.
Because when you can't draw stick figures, and you've got to communicate with an artist,
Yeah.
but at the same time, you want to give that artist total freedom to be creative. And the artist is saying to you, what do you envision? Well, I don't know. Picture.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
It really is special to be able to see both. Donna, you brought it up first, but being able to see what you're writing, that's
Yeah. It's like a little movie going on in your head. You can see it.
Yes, sir.
Have you ever thought of getting in touch with Ben and Jerry's?
Matter of fact, I just called them this week. I've called them numerous times. Their buyer is difficult to get a hold of. And so I just actually left her a message yesterday.
I mean,
So-
they're the kind of people that would like this a lot.
Yeah.
especially the gift part.
Great suggestion.
The heifer,
The supporting.
Yeah, so you have a smattering of what I call my Moo merch table here. I've got a big tent that has, so it's developed into not only my books, but I've got T-shirts and of my illustrations. And my wife said, Jim, why don't you make a plush animal that goes along with it? And so they did three different prototypes, a group out of Canada and Oregon. They have two different locations, but Soft Stuff Creations. And so I worked with them. I said, no, that's not right. Here's, go back to the drawing board. They send me another copy. And so that's the third prototype. We had them made in China and sent. And so my garage is full of those. And right now I'm working with a company that's going to package both the book and the plush. And so I'm working on the design of that, and we're hoping to have that out by Christmas. And that's going to be a great opportunity to hopefully get into the Barnes & Noble. I've done a lot of Barnes & Noble's events, but I'd love to get it more visible at Barnes & Noble's, so they like those box sets.
I don't know how many that you made, but what if it was a puppet, like doing the moo moo moo?
Yeah. They actually gave me that idea because they have the little finger puppets as well, which we could do with all my characters. Yeah, that's a great idea. I used to do puppetry, so.
In Pennsylvania that wrote Moo Moo the Cow. Did you ever
Oh
hear
yeah,
that?
yeah.
It's like a puppet stage, and she has a hole in the book. So you
Oh.
can
yeah.
Oh, that's a cool idea.
Moo Moo the Cow. I think she patented it, but I don't think she went
Yeah.
anywhere with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she had a hole, and then the cow actually talked and told you the story.
Oh, that's
fun.
really neat.
Yeah,
Huh.
Yeah,
it was cool. It was years ago, but
yeah, that's a great idea.
How about some other questions?
I was going to just say, as a poet, I read a lot of children's books also, and notice that a lot of them have not good rhymes, not good cadences.
Yeah.
And I want to congratulate both of you because you've done a really good
Oh,
job
thank you.
of your consistent maintaining the cadence
Yeah.
of the lines and also the rhymes. They're not pushed, they're not forced, they're natural lines.
Oh, thank you.
That's really hard to do.
And they're clever too.
Yes, and they're clever.
Yeah.
And Donna, I also want to just mention as a writer critique too, I loved a couple of lines you used there, which I thought were very original. First, the moon and the sun changed places.
Oh, yeah.
That's very original.
Thanks.
I really like that. The other one was the arms of the dead, like a clock.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
I love to see original things like that. It's very
Thank you. Yeah.
different. Thanks. Yeah.
And as a writer, I appreciated the couplet, and the last word was nope. Just the one word, and it rhymed with, beautifully.
Nope,
it was very
nope
clever.
was always going to be in there.
Yeah, very, very clever.
so who's the character you're wearing?
Oh, this is a holly cow, kind of short for a holy cow, right?
Oh,
And she's walking like a Mujibshian.
okay. I was wondering about that.
Oh yeah. Yes.
admire your ambition, both of you, because it's wonderful. A lot of people have wonderful ideas, but to be able to pick up the ball and take, I mean, you've gone in so many different directions, and I give you a tremendous amount of credit to that. It's so much
It is hard to do. Yeah.
I met with a few authors before I started diving into this, and one of the best piece of advice I ever got was finish the book. And that has been my mantra, all over the thing. The other one I made up is if you don't get your butt in the chair, you're never going to finish the book, and doing the art and all that. But I really needed a deadline. My publisher said,
too.
You need to finish it by Thanksgiving. And this is a couple, I published on May 2018, May 1st. And it says, we need it by, originally they said that we need it by January 1st. But then they called me back up and said, we need it before Thanksgiving. And so I spent, my family was up visiting from Florida and all kinds of stuff. I did not see them the whole weekend except for meals. I was down there drawing and, and finishing it up and doing all the artwork 24/7. But it's kind of what I needed to kind of get it done, and so some people will say don't do deadlines, but I would say do deadlines if you possibly can.
My deadline was Memorial Day when the Starfish
Yeah.
Trail kicked off, and all of May was. Of course, I left things to the last minute. I was cramming, of course, but I had the self-imposed deadline, which thank God, or it wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
Have you ever read Jane Smiley's book by the same title?
The Cows Go Moo?
No, it's just Moo.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there's quite a few cow books out there, you know, and
Cows are cool.
This is literature.
Yeah.
This is not just this is you ought to read it. It's,
yeah.
It's an adult book or a child
no,
book?
no, no, it's an adult book. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Moo, just plain Moo.
I'll check it out, yeah. I was really surprised that I was able to get the URL, thecowsgomoo.com.
Yeah.
Because nobody had taken it, and there's not a book with that actual title
Yeah.
either, which I was surprised.
Yeah.
There's
So.
a book out called The Cow That Couldn't Move. Have you seen that one?
I've done searches, and I've
The pig
got quite a few
couldn't
out.
wink, and he was trying to teach the pig how to, I mean, it was, the sounds, were
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
when you read it to a child, it's really cool.
Yeah,
That
click clack
would be another
moo
idea
is a
for
big
you.
one.
Yeah,
You're
click clack
so
moo.
creative with the words, you could do something like that, teaching
Yeah.
somebody how to move.
And I have an interview this afternoon, not an interview, but a creative phone call with Novel Effect at 2 o'clock today. You guys familiar with Novel Effect? They presented on Shark Tank, and they have their whole mission, and I love their mission, is not just to have kids reading books on tablets, you know, but to really interact with families and caregivers and that. And so what they do is, you know, you get the book. They do have it so you can do it with an ebook as well, but at least you're with another person and you're going through the story. And they have they developed the technology that is, as you're reading the story and you pause, the sound effects and the music pauses, you know, as well. It's always going in the background, but you can read a book at your own pace, and you have all the sound effects and music. So they're working with my song, and we're adding in all kinds of other utterly crazy things that are going to go along with the story. And so we're hoping to have that up by Christmas as well. But Novel Effect, if you check them out, it's a free download for the app, and then you just get the books, and they have all the classics as well as other stories. So it's really a neat opportunity.
The other thing, as a pediatrician, I can't resist telling you about a program called Reach Out and Read, that designed for parents to sit with their kids with books, real books,
Yep.
and read to them. And there's all kinds of studies that show that this kind of interaction is so much more productive than letting them read online or
Yeah.
And it's Reach Out and Read. It's you can probably find this online, and it's an extremely useful bonding experience between parent and child, or anybody, or grandparents.
Yeah.
One of my absolute favorite books with my kids is I'll read to you and you read to me, and it's where every other line is them, you, and all of the stories end with you read. I think I'm saying it backwards, but I read to you and you'll read to me, and it's all of our favorite books because it's
It's a series.
dependent on each other. Yeah,
Right.
yeah, it's great. Yeah.
Well,
Go ahead.
no, please go
You had
ahead.
asked us if we would have a couple questions between Donna and I. Do we have
Yes.
time for that?
We do,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
So do you want to go first?
No, I don't. Because now I forget all my questions.
Well, one of the ones I had was the Sandwich Authors Alliance. A little plug for Sandwich Authors Alliance, as we all know, is awesome. And so I know you have an office here. How has your connection with Sandwich Authors Alliance and having an office here been helpful to you?
It's been great because I was down in Merchant Square by myself in a studio that wasn't utilized nearly as much as it should have been, just because I'm here, there, and kids and whatnot. So moving here has been wonderful. One, because just the vibe in here. There's foot traffic. People are excited to be in the building and curious to see what's in here. So the vibe is really nice. I do a lot of work for the Alliance, so it's nice to be able to work closely, right, Joanne?
As long as you still like it, because we have to pop in there and say, can you do this?
I have noise canceling headphones, so they know when my headphones are on. I'm in the zone.
Yeah, you kind of went from one extreme to the other.
Yeah, so I just really, really like being around more people and people that come in here. They already appreciate art because they're in the building. So
And some people do wonderful work, but are not great at marketing their books, like the person who wrote the.
are you talking about me?
You're talking about all of us.
Yeah,
No,
Yeah.
no, she knows I'm specific.
I'm terrible. You
And
think
so
you're
we
bad
were
at marketing. I
happy-
disagree. I think you're miles
we were
ahead.
happy to get her book in here.
Yeah.
Because we kept saying, take it over to Beth's, take it over to, yeah, I will.
I know, it's painful for me, and I now know that about myself, that I cannot be in charge of my own marketing because I just can't do it. It's painful. Yeah.
How about another question?
About yourself.
Any more?
Oh yeah, let me see, what were some of my questions? Well, one of my questions was, had you always drawn growing up?
Yeah.
So you answered that one. But I thought it was great that you actually took a class to make the book.
Yeah.
And really, your dedication to learning the craft of the illustration, I thought was very impressive. That's not a question at all. It's just a statement.
Thank you.
But I thought that was really admirable to delve into it with such full commitment. Thought that was excellent.
I was going to ask you, I love the term sequential art, because that's what we do.
Yeah.
You know, we're making sequential art in our books, and I noticed on your website you have the term surface design.
Yep.
I was wondering if you could say more about that, because I wasn't familiar with that.
Yeah, we were
term.
talking a little bit about that before. Surface design is really any artwork or pattern that you would make that would be put on the surface of anything. Curtains, shower, clothing, wallpaper, so many things. Yeah, anything you would make on spoonflower. So the process is a little different because the artwork comes first. In my case, not always, but you just make a pattern of whatever you want, and then you see who wants to buy it. And somebody that's going to put it on a pillow might buy it. Someone that's going to put it on children's pajamas might buy it. So it's kind of it's a little bit of a flop from how artwork often works. You make the art first, and you just put it out there, and whoever might want it wants it. What was the medium you used for your book?
So my original book, I loved pen and ink,
Yep.
right? And my first couple drafts were watercolor, but I found with watercolor, I couldn't get the details that I really wanted to get, because you got the bleed and all that. So then I found out about these Copic markers, and it's an oil-based marker that blends really nicely, and a lot of them, you use them in manga, anime type illustrations and comic books. And so I loved it, so I have a whole, you can get like 1,000 different colors. I probably have about 50 that I bought. They're a little bit expensive. You can shop around, but Blick, supplied me quite a bit, and I'd run out of ink, and I'd say, Beth, can you go get me? My wife is Beth. Can you go get me this color at Blick? Because I'm going and going. And so Copic markers, but for Christmas last year, I got an iPad. And there's a great illustration thing. I really struggled with Adobe. I would learn how to do something, and then a couple days would go by, I'd forget, well, how did I do that, Christy's giving me the time thing. But there's an app called Procreate, and it's very user-friendly, easy. So I actually did all these drawings by hand, and then I scanned them in. But for the cover, I did it all by hand, and then I colored it through Procreate.
Yeah.
And then this one I did through Amazon and Ingram. I have it both on Ingram and Amazon as POD. So it cost me like $2. I sell it for $6.95, and so it's really nice. I don't have to get a bunch of those except for when I do events.
Yep.
Well, thank you both so much. This has been amazing, hasn't it? Really fun.
Thank you.
I just want to make a comment. Another purpose of these talks is to introduce us specifically to the books. And you heard these authors talk about the value of putting a book like this in the hands of a child or a parent or a grandparent. So these are for sale here at the Alliance, and the opportunity to have them signed by the authors is another purpose of this. So if you want to support the authors, here they are, and here are their books. And if you want to support the Alliance, we have a donation, not a box, but a fishbowl. And we would very much appreciate your support to enable us to pay for expenses. The authors are giving their talks for free and their time, and we're really grateful. But before we close, in addition to thanks, I have a little presentation. I had a yard sale, and if you've had yard sales, you understand you come across little treasures. Jim, may I present?
I'll add that to my menagerie of cows.
Yes, please. So I think that's it. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you all. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
So you're medium.
Yeah.